Welcome to The Poetry Joint, a CJSW podcast production about poems, poets, and poetics. I'm your host, Stephen Donahue. Away we go. A little background on this episode. Early in 2026, I dropped into Owl's Nest Books. It's located in the Britannia Shopping Plaza, southwest Calgary. A little outside my normal travel routes, and I hadn't been in there before, so I thought I should check it out. That day, I did meet Sarah Pratt, who was working. Sarah is the literary events manager, and we had a brief discussion on poetry, poets, and how Owl's Nest is involved with poetry and writing in Calgary. On their website, there is an events page that lists reading events, and I was told Owl's Nest regularly hosts readings to launch the spring and fall issues of Freefall magazine. A customer, overhearing my questions about poetry, joined in and said, "Have you heard of Richard Harrison?" and proceeded to list many of Richard's fine qualities and achievements. Then she wrote out his email on a piece of paper for me. I would eventually get hold of Richard, and he came into the CJSW studios for a conversation. Just a quick, brief bio. His book on not losing my father's ashes in the flood won the 2017 Governor General's and the Stephen D. Stephenson's Awards for Poetry. He is Professor Emeritus at Mount Royal University, and here is some of our conversation. Why don't I just hit my standard one first? Why poetry?
Oh, the easy question. Well, I think poetry chooses you. Poetry chooses you in the way a sport chooses you, in the way music chooses you. We're all exposed to all sorts of art forms, all sorts of activities when we're young. And the one that resonates, the one that speaks to you is something you know. It's something you know that that you both want to have more of it and you want to participate in it. You want to make it. My father was raised in northern England, in Leeds, in the 1920s and 30s. And the schooling system there, the British schooling system, was very keen on having kids memorize poetry. And it was partly the way in which they created a sense of literacy amongst the students. And it was partly used to create a love of Britain among British students. Right, here's the great literature, memorize it. It's an ancient way. It's an ancient way in which nations are bound, in which people are bound to each other by common stories. And Dad really took to it. And he memorized not just the school ones, but he kept going. And so he would reach for lines of poetry when he wanted to express something that was deep to him, it was moving to him. And he would quote these lines, and they'd be from Shakespeare or William Butler Yeats. They'd be from the King James Bible. So I would live for the day, this is my beloved son in whom I am well pleased. It's like that kind of thing would happen. Or, now is the winter of our discontent, made glorious summer by this son of York. And that elevated language was something that he would use to express himself, or just for the pleasure of it. And I picked up on that. I picked up on memorizing poems with him. And it was part of our sort of fundamental cultural dialogue. The way people will swap movie quotes with each other. We would, I start a line and he would pick it up, he would pick it up, I'd pick it up, he would pick it up. And that was a constant theme for us as I was growing up. And it lasted for the rest of his life. Even at the end, when dementia was taking all the memories from starting at the present and eating its way into his past, he could recite Fern Hill, and that lots of people get exposed to that, but not everybody picks it up. But for me, that was something really profound about feeling alive when I was doing that.
We'll just add a little break here to add some context. I wasn't familiar with Fern Hill, but I was able to find a recording of it by our regent when he was just the Prince Charles, reading Fern Hill.
Now as I was young and easy under the apple boughs, about the lilting house, and happy as the grass was green, the night above the dingle starry, time let me hail and climb, golden in the heydays of his eyes. And honoured among wagons, I was prince of the apple towns, and once below a time I lordly had the trees and leaves trail with daisies and barley down the rivers of the windfall light. And as I was green and carefree, famous among the barns about the happy yard, and singing as the farm was home, in the sun that is young once only, time let me play and be golden in the mercy of his means. And green and golden I was huntsman and herdsman, the calves sang to my horn, the foxes on the hills barked clear and cold, and the Sabbath rang slowly in the pebbles of the holy streams. All the sun long it was running, it was lovely. The hayfields high as the house, the tunes from the chimneys, it was air and playing, lovely and watery and far green as grass. And nightly, under the simple stars, as I rode to sleep, the owls were bearing the farm away. All the moon long I heard, blessed among stables, the nightjars flying with the ricks, and the horses flashing into the dark. And then, to awake, and the farm, like a wanderer white with the dew, come back, the cock on his shoulder. It was all shining, it was Adam and maiden, the sky gathered again, and the sun grew round that very day. So it must have been after the birth of the simple light in the first spinning place, the spellbound horses walking warm out of the winning green stable onto the fields of praise. And honoured among foxes and pheasants by the gay house under the new-made clouds, and happy as the heart was long, in the sun borne over and over, I ran my heedless ways. My wishes raced through the house-high hay, and nothing I cared at my sky-blue trades, that time allows in all his tuneful turnings, so few and such morning songs, before the children green and golden follow him out of grace. Nothing I cared in the lamb-white days that time would take me up to the swallow-thronged loft by the shadow of my hand, in the moon that is always rising, nor that riding to sleep I should hear him fly with the high fields and wake to the farm forever fled from the childless land. Oh, as I was young and easy in the mercy of his means, time held me green and dying, though I sang in my chains like the sea.
Back to exploring poetry with Richard Harrison.
And then when I was starting university at Trent in Peterborough, Ontario, we had an amazing list of poets and writers, novelists who would come to Trent to give readings. So Trent was a small place, so I'd be sitting in a room with like Patrick Lane and Robert Croach and Margaret Lawrence. No, probably some, about twice as big as this studio, but that's it. Right? And there'd be a small group of students who would be interested in writing, and so I'd get these tremendous exposure to writers who are writing about Canada and writing about their real lives here, which wasn't something I could get from the British poetry. If you learn British poetry and you're a Canadian, you think poetry is British, right? There is something very different about this land. There is something very different about these people. What is it? Well, here, we'll explore that, and that's what I think a nation's literature does. And to me, that was just this tremendous project. Oh my heaven, I've got to do this. I've got to try this, and I did, and it stuck.
How would you describe your poetry?
I was more about human relationships. I work in a sort of lyric narrative tradition, so they read very much like rhythmically recited stories. I'm very concerned with the intimate relationships of family. There's a lot of stuff about my whole relationship with my parents, what that relationship meant to me what it means to me as a man, what it meant to me as a son, what it has come to mean to me as a father. So it's very, very familial. Most of it is very, very focused on that sort of thing. I mean, I write about other things too. And I mean, I wrote an entire book about poems in the language of hockey because I was really interested in the way that language worked. To create a group of people who are both hockey fans and fans of the hockey story, the hockey narrative, hockey lore, and also the athlete. How does the family dynamic spread itself out over your whole life? So there's my father's athleticism, and then there's Hero the Play, books of poems about hockey. There's my sense of being a child and then being a parent. So I've focused very much in Big Breath of a Wish on my daughter learning how to talk, learning how to speak. So after she was born, the book begins with her birth and it ends with her talking. So I'm really paying close attention to how she develops language. One of the things that poetry does as an art form is it looks for ways to make language new. In the way that a painter will look, I want to make this color like you've never seen it before. I want to give you a shape that you really feel compelled to touch because it's so interesting to you. The way music, musicians are always pressing on the edge of all the music that was done before and see if you can find some new emotion to excite with melody. Poetry is all about words. How do you make words new? How do I make, we've used words millions of times. How do I make the word, milk? How do I make the word milk sound new, right? Well, my daughter learning how to talk, I was actually seeing somebody do what I'm always trying to do. Like, language is old for me. How do I make it new? Well, here's somebody's, it's the first time through. So I followed her progression as a speaker, as a learner of the language, so a maker of the language. So there was that book. So everything really kind of spreads out from those familial relationships. The landscape starts to come into my poem, into my book. It's called On Not Losing My Father's Ashes in the Flood, which was the Alberta flood in 2013. My dad's ashes were in the basement. They disappeared for a while. They came back. We found them. But it was on thinking I'd lost it and then not having lost it. It was I think that is probably the most profound overlap between the natural world and my familial concerns.
Well, it was fairly dramatic, yeah. Think of a line running through. So there is kind of the learning aspect to your approach to poetry, from what you learned from your father, what you learned in school, paying attention to your daughter, to learning how she approaches language, which I guess takes us to your other role is as a teacher.
Yeah. My friend Derek Beaulieu, terrific poet, terrific concrete poet, once pointed out that you can't disguise who you are when you're writing your stuff. You can't. Don't try, right? And I mean, you've picked it up, right? Yeah, I'm dedicated to learning. I'm dedicated to helping others learn. I'm dedicated to learning myself. And yeah, I'm a professor out at Mount Royal University to creative writing, essay writing, literary studies. The other driving force is if you learn something, then the world is different. If it's true learning, if it's just memorization or whatever, it's harder to make that happen. But if you can look at the world, or you can have a conversation with someone where both of you feel like there's been this sense of discovery, then yeah, that's what true learning is.
How do you teach poetry? I come into your class. Your class.
Yeah.
What's day one?
Day one is learning how to be free on the page. So you generate a document, you can own a house. You generate a document, you can pass to the next level. And we're constantly creating these documents that are conditioned by the expectations of the receiver. And in many ways, because of the way in which we teach in general, which is to meet the expected answer. One of the first thing that needs to happen is to take away the expectations from people as to what they're going to write when they're writing a poem. It is easy to be trapped by what you think a poem should be. Poem, it comes from the Greek poiesis, which means creation. And not creation in the sense that this cup is a creation, or these machines here that we're talking into are creation for a particular purpose, to meet a particular human need, but creation in the sense that that tree over there is a creation, something that exists for its own sake. The reader response theory that I use, the free writing approach that I use, is all about letting people find out what it is they want to write or they need to write, or more spiritually, I suppose, what needs to be written through them. Like, each of us has this amazing collection of information in the brain, like that we've got a finite number of words, but an infinite number of combinations. How do you find which combination out of the infinite number that could be to do whatever you need to do? How do you find that which has its own existence for its own sake? A lot of teaching poetry, particularly in the early part, is removing the expectations, the confines, the shackles that bind us to the idea that we can only be this limited thing. Once you've got that freedom, then you want to do something with it. Now, oh great, I can write whatever I want. But does it create the effect that I want? There's a whole language that I use to elicit responses from the people who hear people's poetry or read their poetry or both, to tell them what they've actually done, which is different than saying that they've done things good, done things well or badly, or the poem is good or bad. Those judgmental terms are really, they stunt the growth of the writer. If you start judging things too early, you don't get a chance to get judged too early, get afraid. This hockey book I wrote it in 1994, so that's a long time ago. Almost 30 years ago, 30-something years ago. I actually wrote it over a 4-year period, and I tied it in with the NHL, with stuff that was going on in the NHL at that time.
Yep.
Cast your mind back to the 1990s, right? So the greats of the game from the 70s and 80s were still in the lore. So people like Jean Beliveau and Maurice Richard, there were names that people all could knew, and I had lots of fun conjuring with them. I could call on them, and you and I would know who I was talking about. But the book stayed the same, but now, time has gone on, and there's lots of names in there that people don't know. But the book still lives as poetry. And I think this is true of any poetry that has this issue that you were talking about, is that even if there are words, terms, phrases, names, cultural allusions that aren't contemporary to us, if the poem still knows who they are, the reader will go, or the listener will go, oh, I have that equivalent. I know that equivalent person, right? Oh, he's talking about, his own Connor McDavid, right? The poem still lives. And I think trying to squeeze the poem and say it's a document about information, and if you don't know all the information, you don't get the poem, is a mistake. Because who knows what Jabberwocky means? I don't know. It was brillig in the slithy togue. I have no idea. But it just sounds so interesting that it works.
Well, Perhaps this is a good segue, being as you have the book. Would you like to read a poem or two? And we can give people a taste of what
Okay.
a hockey poems sound like.
All right, here's what a hockey poem sounds like. All right, let's see. Well, here, this is the one. I launched this book at the Hockey Hall of Fame. And when I was a kid, I was born and raised in Toronto, I would go down to the exhibition grounds, which is where the original Hockey Hall of Fame was. And it was, I mean, you want to talk about small town beauty. Right? They'd have these little booths, and it would be set up, and there'd be the Stanley Cup and the Hart Trophy and all this stuff, and a little note, little card like it was a dinner guest, and it would sit there to Stanley Cup or whatever, and it was right there, and I thought, I did the thing. I was a kid, and I didn't know that I would never be a hockey player, so I thought, well, I'm not going to touch the Stanley Cup until I win it. But then I wrote this book, and there was a lot of really wonderful and enthusiastic support for it. So I ended up launching it at the Hockey Hall of Fame, and which had been moved now to the old Bank of Commerce building right across from Union Station. Big rose window over the top of the main rotunda, and that's where the cup is. It's on a podium, on a platform, underneath this beautiful pink light. You can go and touch it. It's still there, still open to the public. They set me up to do this reading right beside the cup. So I'm here. So it was there. I was there. I put my hand on it for the first time. Stanley Cup. At the center of the circle of the champions of the world, Mario Lemieux hoists the cup, kisses its silver thigh. The names of men where his will soon be cut, with a finish pure as a mirror. Around him, the tumult. And Scotty Bowman, the winningest coach in the NHL, named his second son Stanley when his Canadians won it in 73 with a Stonewall blue line and a dizzying transition game. Every player on every team who has ever won the cup gets to take it home. It is partied on front lawns, beside swimming pools, and in the trunks of cars. And even the guy who left it by the side of the road and drove away, still, he thinks of it as holy. And that word, holy, appears most in the conversation of veterans who know how the touch fades. The shoulder takes longer between days of easy movement. How Bobby Hull passed on his only chance to drink champagne from its lip when the Hawks won it in 61 because he thought there'd be so many in his life. Some take the cup apart, clean the rings, make minor repairs in their basements, and then inscribe on the inside of the column the unofficial log of their intimate knowledge. This way, I have loved you.
Richard Harrison has a fairly significant presence on the internet. If you do a search, Poetry and Voice, the Poetry Archive, MRU, WordFest. The Poetry Archive even has Richard reading some poems. I'm just going to sneak one of those in here to add a little more of Richard's poetry. Oh, and the Calgary Public Library has books. Richard Harrison books.
Duplo City. So much I've filled my father and my mother up with words, they have become descriptions of themselves. I promise this page, this book will end when Emma remembers, and remembering gives names. Silently today, she stacks 3 hollow blocks of Duplo, one by one, on the foundation of a longer block before her. Silently, as in an achievement of the body, herself as yet unspoken, undoubled by her tongue's utterance of I. Sign of that which thinks, unperceived perceiver, precursor of pure reason and its result, master, slave, self, syllable by syllable, built by language in the hollows of her mouth, current theory says, so language can be used. Into her silent body I've read the I I've already made of myself. If she can mean nothing, if that is an ideal, it is not to me. Right now, a silent baby places her toys in order while her father watches outside her field of vision and writes, now, years away from the moment she can read this page and tell me if I kept my word. All poems are under construction, all the time. I've got these books and people publish poems all the time, but it's not like, I don't know of an artist, and I like to extend that relationship with writing as long as I can. So the way to figure out what it is that the poem still needs to do, or you still need to do for the poem, is have a group of people around whom you can ask the right questions of. The part of you that wants to write wants the writing to be best that it can be. Oftentimes, you'll write a poem, and people will read the poem to their friends, right, and say something like, "Did you get it?" And of course, your friends are going to go, yeah. People who want to take care of you as a person will answer in a way that's confirming. It's great. Everybody needs those people in their lives. But the writer in you doesn't want that. The writer in you wants to know, prove to me you got it. Tell me what you got. That's a different thing. So the nature of the questions is really important, and the nature of the mutual dedication to the work is what makes a group operate, so that people actually get better at it, and they get better at what they're wanting to do, and they get better at wanting what they want to do on their own terms.
Do you have another poem you'd like to read?
Let me read this poem. This is I talked about my father, the memorization of poems. As I said, he died of dementia back in 2011. So this is the last conversation, or one of the last conversations I had with him. And the poem, the reference to the poem is Dylan Thomas's Villanelle, "Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night," which was one of his favorites. So the poem is called "With the Dying of the Light." I recited to him, now as I was young and easy, and in the cough-afflicted wheeze that was left of my father's voice, he answered, "Under the apple boughs." And so it went between us in the days I waited for him to recover, the way hope pillows its sails with nothing, or falter, fade, and pass away. You haven't heard, "Time held me green and dying, though I sang in my chains like the sea," until you've heard it from the wizened mouth of a man in the not knowing when, before his death. This is the reply to the poet who longs for the old man to rage at the night and heed his child's plea, "Don't go." My father's was the soft song of sickened lungs, lips that lost the taste for even one more swallow, while I waited with him in the light that faded as it drew close. I saw him from the doorway, silent as a mummy, his hands locked into each other like power shovels, tipped into the posture of the day's last work, the crew gone home for the night. Once he waved, after days of Shakespeare and Dickens, the anthem of literature he had been taught to love as his country itself, and through which he spoke best the savage and gentle contradictions of his heart. I'd said, "I love you," and he'd said, "I love you too," without the artifice of poetry. And he waved when I moved from the bed, the way a boat, pushed by a hand gone still on the dock, carries yet its force across the water. It is here, now, what that hand held when it held itself up, the lull before the poem begins, the surrender when it's done.
Thank you, Richard. This has been the Poetry Joint, back in a month's time. Thank you for listening. The bonus poem this episode is titled Shadow River, Muskoka by Pauline Johnson, who lived from 1861 to 1913. A stream of tender gladness, of filmy sun and opal-tinted skies, of warm midsummer air that lightly lies in mystic rings, where softly swings the music of 1,000 wings that almost tones to sadness. Midway twixt earth and heaven, a bubble in the pearly air I seem to float upon the sapphire floor, a dream of clouds of snow above, below, drift with my drifting, dim and slow, as twilight drifts to even. The little fern leaf, bending upon the brink, its green reflection greets, and kisses soft the shadow that it meets, with touch so fine, the border line, the keenest vision can't define. So perfect is the blending. The far fir trees that cover the brownish hills with needles green and gold, the arching elms o'erhead, vine-grown and old. Repictured are, beneath me far, where not a ripple moves to mar, shades underneath or over. Mine is the undertone, the beauty, strength, and power of the land, will never stir or bend at my command. But all the shade is marred or made if I but dip my paddle blade, and it is mine alone. O pathless world of seeming, O pathless life of mine whose deep ideal is more my own than ever was the real. For others, fame and love's red flame and yellow gold, I can only claim the shadows and the dreaming.